In the summer of 1987, in a small village in rural Nigeria, a farmer named Emeka Obi was caught doing something that no one in that village or anywhere else had ever seen before. He was kneeling at a grave at midnight, eating, not just once, every single night for 11 months. And the most terrifying part, he wasn't eating food he brought with him. He claimed the grave provided it. Now, before you write this off as superstition or folklore, the local doctor, two police officers, and a Catholic priest all witnessed what happened next. And none of them ever spoke about it the same way twice. This is the story of the man who ate food from the grave. To understand what happened to Emeka Obi, you have to understand who he was before it started. Emeka was 34 years old, a cassava farmer, a father of three. He was the kind of man that neighbors described as quiet, reliable, boring in the best possible way. He woke up at 5 a.m. every morning. He walked until sundown. He went to church on Sundays, sat in the third row, same spot, every week. His wife, Ada, said the most adventurous thing he'd ever done was once buy a radio on credit. He was not a man who courted strange things, which is exactly what makes what happened so deeply, deeply unsettling. In January of 1987, Emeka's younger brother, Chidi, died suddenly. He was 27, no illness, no warning, went to sleep one night and simply didn't wake up. The village mourned. Chidi was buried in the local cemetery, a stretch of red earth behind the old Anglican church, surrounded by mango trees and low grass. For the first few weeks, Emeka visited the grave daily. That's normal. Grief does that to people. It pulls them back to the last place the person existed. But then the visits started happening at night. And then they started lasting longer. And then his wife noticed something that made her stomach drop. He was coming home full. Not just not hungry, full, satisfied, like a man who had just had a proper meal, even on nights when there was nothing left in the house to eat. Ada confronted him. Emeka's answer was calm, disturbingly calm. He told her, Chidi leaves food for me at the grave every night. I can't not go. If I don't go, the food rots and it feels like I'm rejecting him. Ada didn't know what to say to that. She told the elder told the local pastor. The pastor, a man named Reverend Kingsley Adeze, who had been running that church for 22 years and had seen everything, decided he needed to see it for himself. So one Tuesday night in March of 1987, Reverend Adeze, two police constables, and the village doctor followed Emeka to the cemetery. They kept their distance. They watched. Emeka walked directly to his brother's grave, knelt down, and placed his hands flat on the soil. He stayed like that for about 4 minutes, completely still, head bowed, silent. And then, according to all four witnesses who were present that night, something was placed in front of him. None of them could agree on how. The Reverend said he saw a hand. The doctor said it was more like the objects appeared. One constable said he looked away at the wrong moment. The other constable refused to ever discuss it again. But what they all agreed on, what all four of them signed statement about, was that Emeka ate. Bread, it looked like. And something else. Something dark and steaming, even in the night air. He ate slowly, deliberately, like a man at a table. And when he was done, he stood up, dusted off his knees, and walked home. No one spoke on the walk back, not a single word. Word spread fast in the small village. People stopped letting their children play near the cemetery after dark. Mothers whispered. Men argued in the market about what Emeka was really doing out there. Some said he'd made a pact. Some said Chidi's spirit was restless and was trapping Emeka, feeding him so he'd keep coming back, so he wouldn't be alone. Some said the food wasn't food at all, that it looked like food, that it tasted like food, but that something about it was changing Emeka slowly, from the inside out. Because here's what nobody talked about enough. Emeka was changing. Not dramatically, not the way you'd expect from a horror story. It was subtle, quiet. He stopped going to church. He started sleeping through the days and staying awake through the nights. He became detached, present in body but absent in spirit, which, if you knew Emeka before, was the most frightening thing of all, because this had been a warm man, a man who laughed easily. His wife said it was like living with someone who was in the process of becoming somewhere else. In November of 1987, 11 months after it started, Reverend Adaze decided enough was enough. He went to the grave alone during the day, and he performed a full burial rite over Chidi's grave. Prayers, holy water, the works. He commanded, in very direct spiritual language, that whatever connection existed between the living and this grave be severed. That night, Emeka went to the cemetery as usual. He never told anyone exactly what happened, but he came home before midnight, earlier than he'd ever come home before. He sat in the front room, he didn't eat, he didn't speak. At some point in the night, Ada woke up and found him outside in the yard, standing very still, looking in the direction of the cemetery. She asked him what was wrong. He said, "He's not angry. He just doesn't understand why I stopped coming." And then he came inside and he went to sleep. And he never went back to the grave again. Emeka Obi lived for another 31 years. He died in 2018 at the age of 65. By most accounts, he returned to a version of his normal life. He went back to farming. He went back to church, though people who knew him said he always sat near the exit now, like a man who needed to know he could leave quickly. He never fully discussed what happened during those 11 months. He gave one interview to a local journalist in 1994, where he said only this: "I was not crazy, I was not lying, I was grieving. And grief, if you let it, will take you somewhere that is very hard to come back from." The journalist asked him if the food was real. Emeka looked at him for a long moment, and then he said, "I was never hungry when I left that grave." Make of that what you will. The Reverend, the doctor, and one of the constables all passed away before this story could be properly documented. The other constable, now in his late 70s, was tracked down by a researcher in 2011. He was asked one question: "What did you see that night at the cemetery?" He answered one sentence. He said, "I saw a man being fed by something that loved him." And he refused to say another word about it. Now look, I can't tell you what Emeka Obi experienced was real in the way that we typically define real. I can't tell you whether that was genuine supernatural contact, a grief-induced break from reality, or something that science simply doesn't have a category for yet. What I can tell you is that 4 witnesses showed up to debunk it, and none of them did. What I can tell you is that a man mourned his brother in a way so total, so consuming, that the boundary between this world and whatever is next became for him genuinely thin. And maybe that's the most frightening thing about this story. Not the grave, not the food, not the hand that may or may not have appeared in the dark, but the idea that love, pushed to its absolute extreme, might actually be powerful enough to reach somewhere it was never supposed to go. I'm Nanolima, and thanks for watching. And if you're someone who's grieving right now, I hope you find peace on this side of things. Sleep well.